By the way, as they were talking here, and we're getting this alert, this had been out there, but it's now being confirmed by the Pentagon. It says a Chinese warship has seized a U.S. Navy underwater drone that was collecting presumably unclassified data in the South China Sea. This is the same neck of the woods, you might recall, where the Chinese have, over the last couple of years, really been militarizing islands that technically didn't belong to them. And that is something that Donald Trump has indicated as president he simply would not accept. He's not spelled out exactly how he would respond, but we do know that the president will likely be asked about that, President Obama, in his press conference planned less than 2 hours from now. So much to touch on with former Virginia Governor Jim Gilmore, a 2016 presidential candidate in his own way. I don't want to hit you broadside with this, but this had been out there that the Chinese were doing this. What do you make of it? How should we respond?
Well, I think we're going to have a solid policy, something more than just an Asian reset or an Asian pivot, and really decide what our policy is going to be about freedom of navigation of the seas. The Chinese continue to try to spread their influence. We have an interest in making sure that ourselves and our allies have freedom of navigation. And frankly, this is a real friction point, and the new president is going to have a solid policy that's decisively stated so there's no misunderstanding either with our adversaries or our allies.
You know, I think we've been so focused, Governor, on Russian hacking, what role, the degree to which they were, mucking around in our last election, that we're losing sight of probably a bigger threat for the time being, and that is China. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think we have many adversaries in this modern world that we're going to have to deal with. We're going to have to address the Iranian issue going forward, the Chinese issue in the Pacific. We have an interest in making sure that our allies are secure and our interests are secure, and the Chinese continue to push against that while simultaneously they're being good trading partners. And now, of course, there's the Russians, which is the subject of your sort of hacking issue here. The Russians are emerging also. We're going to have strength, decisiveness, and a clear policy, foreign policy, which I think we have not had up to this point.
You mentioned the Russians, sir, and I'd be remiss if I didn't get the response from Vladimir Putin to these charges, essentially saying to the White House, prove it. Show the proof that you have that I was behind this or that my country was behind this. Now, of course, the back and forth on this has been endless. It used to be a unanimous or considered unanimous view among the intelligence community. Now we come to discover not everyone in the intelligence community, but it is a mess. So is it your sense that Russia was involved in hacking in the election and did so alone, or does it matter?
Well, I think this is part of an overall propaganda program on the part of the Russians to try to influence not only American policy, but those of our allies as well. There's evidence that they're actually broadcasting into Latvia and Lithuania and into Germany. But you know what? During the Cold War, which I participated in as a NATO agent, we did Radio Free Europe. We broadcast in with the glories of democracy and what's better. I personally think that Russia would be better off as a good democracy. I think we're better off if Ukraine is independent and becomes a democracy. And we should be asserting these things. And I would expect them to try to create chaos and confusion on our side of the aisle. So I just think that if I had one thing to say to you, Neil, it's this. When the Obama people basically said, well, this is all about Trump and the election, that's really wrong. They're just seeing this through this kind of anti-Trump lens.
But do you think that Russian move, if indeed they did act, either in concert with someone or on their own, that they actually affected the results, this push to make sure the electors have access to this intelligence, do you think that it changed the results of the election?
Well, it obviously did not. The people of the United States voted for change. That's why the industrial Midwest changed parties and voted for the Republicans. And I think to suggest anything else is just a distortion of the facts. There's, by the way, no assertion that the Russians did anything to change voting machines or voting totals or any of that kind of thing. There's no evidence of that whatsoever, no allegation of that. And meanwhile, the question of the information war that's going on, I think we're going to have to be more sophisticated. If we're going to live in a communication society, we have to have a better understanding of what that means and how we defend ourselves.
All right. We do know as well, sir, real quickly, that the New York Times is reporting Hillary Clinton was telling backers last night, I believe, that James Comey and that Russian hack experience for her loss. What do you think of that?
Oh, this is just delusional. And they've got to sort of self-justify as to why they lost. The American people rejected the policies of the Democratic Party. Slow growth, less opportunity, people who are working and not really getting anywhere, wage slow growth. and really a message of all based upon redistribution of wealth and sexism and racism. These are the things that the people of the United States rejected and decided to have a change. And that is the reality. So if she just thinks that it's either Comey or the Russians or something like that, that's just not in touch with reality.
All right, sir, thank you very, very much.